From Paris to Prague, from Rome to Berlin, the grand cathedrals of Europe still stand, their stained glass glowing, their bells still ringing, but inside, empty pews, silent altars. Once the beating heart of Western faith, these monumental structures now often serve as museums for tourists, not houses for worshippers. This profound shift demands a critical historical analysis. What happened to the spiritual bedrock of a continent, and what does this mean for the very identity of Europe and the future of global Christianity? Welcome to the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed through rigorous analysis. If you are a historian, religious scholar, or sociologist seeking truth beyond conventional narratives, subscribe, share, and join our critical examination of these pivotal cultural shifts. We delve into the complex interplay of belief, institution, and society. For nearly two millennia, Christianity was not merely a religion in Europe, it was the foundational operating system of civilization. From the Roman Empire's conversion under Constantine to the intricate legal codes of the Holy Roman Empire, faith shaped laws, art, and identity. Monasteries preserved knowledge, cathedrals served as centers of urban life, and theological debates fueled intellectual inquiry, laying the groundwork for universities. These towering Gothic structures, reaching toward heaven, were more than just buildings. They were tangible expressions of collective aspiration and social cohesion. They symbolized a shared worldview, where baptisms, weddings, and funerals marked the rhythm of life under the watchful eye of the Church. This era, often termed Christendom, saw faith as an inseparable component of political legitimacy and cultural expression, a critical lens through which all aspects of existence were understood. The very concept of Europe in many ways was forged in the crucible of Christian belief and its subsequent internal conflicts, such as the Reformation, which paradoxically solidified national identities while fragmenting religious unity. The narrative of decline is not anecdotal, it is starkly evidenced in sociological data across Western Europe. Church attendance has plummeted, transforming vibrant congregations into sparse gatherings. In the United Kingdom, weekly church attendance hovers below 5%, a dramatic fall from previous generations. France, historically known as the eldest daughter of the Church, now sees over half its population identifying as non-religious, a profound demographic and spiritual shift. Similar trends are observed across Germany, Spain, and even traditionally devout Italy, where secularization is rapidly accelerating. Sociologists term this phenomenon post-Christian Europe, a landscape where religious affiliation and practice are no longer normative. This isn't merely a cultural adjustment, it represents a fundamental reordering of societal values and individual meaning-making, challenging long-held assumptions about the role of religion in public life. The institutional church, once a central pillar, now struggles for relevance in an increasingly indifferent populace. The roots of this decline are deeply embedded in the intellectual currents of the Enlightenment, which profoundly reshaped European thought. After the devastation of two world wars, Europe embarked on a radical rebuilding, not just of its cities, but of its entire worldview. Science, reason, and liberal humanism emerged as the new guiding principles, promising progress and human flourishing independent of divine authority. The Enlightenment's assertion that man no longer needs God transitioned from a philosophical proposition to a lived societal experiment. As education expanded and economies grew, traditional faith was increasingly perceived as an anachronism, a relic of a less enlightened past. This philosophical shift from a God-centered to a human-centered understanding of existence created a vacuum of transcendent meaning. While offering unprecedented individual freedoms and scientific advancements, this secular paradigm also left many grappling with existential questions, often without the traditional frameworks for spiritual solace or communal purpose. The critical question for sociologists is whether this vacuum is truly empty, or if new, often unacknowledged, forms of belief and belonging are emerging to fill the void. A critical factor in the erosion of faith has been the Church's own profound institutional failures and moral compromises. The pervasive and devastating abuse scandals, particularly within the Catholic Church, shattered public trust and exposed a systemic culture of secrecy and protection of perpetrators over victims. These revelations were not isolated incidents, but represented a deep betrayal of the moral authority the Church claimed to embody. For many, the institution's response was perceived as inadequate, self-serving, and deeply hypocritical. Beyond abuse, instances of political entanglement and perceived hypocrisy within religious leadership further alienated generations. Many Europeans, while perhaps not rejecting spirituality entirely, decisively walked away from institutions they felt had compromised their integrity. For these individuals, silence became a safer, more authentic response than continued affiliation with a system that had caused such profound pain and disillusionment. When trust in the sacred institution dies, the faith it purports to represent often follows, leaving behind a legacy of skepticism and a critical re-evaluation of religious authority. Today, millions still flock to Europe's cathedrals, but their purpose has fundamentally shifted from worship to observation. The sacred has been transformed into spectacle, a backdrop for selfies and historical appreciation rather than spiritual communion. Cathedrals now often feature gift shops selling souvenirs, replacing the offering of communion with commercial transactions. Audio tours explain architectural history, but rarely facilitate profound worship. This commodification of sacred space highlights a critical cultural phenomenon. Europe remembers Christianity culturally, appreciating its artistic and historical legacy, but largely no longer believes it spiritually. The echo of faith still resonates in every stained glass window and crumbling stone, but it is fading into a historical curiosity. For religious scholars, this raises questions about the nature of sacred space in a secular age and whether aesthetic appreciation can ever truly substitute for active belief and communal practice. The cathedrals stand as magnificent monuments, yet their emptiness speaks volumes about a civilization that has largely disinvested from its spiritual heritage. And yet, the story is far from over. A critical, hopeful perspective reveals that faith, though transformed, is not entirely extinguished. In recent years, new forms of religious expression and vibrant communities have begun to emerge across Europe. Immigrant congregations, particularly from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, are injecting new life and diverse spiritual practices into urban centers, often filling previously empty churches with passionate worship. These communities represent a significant demographic and theological shift, challenging the narrative of monolithic decline. Furthermore, pockets of indigenous revival are evident, from Poland's steadfast Catholic youth movements to smaller dynamic church plants in secularized Western European cities. These movements often emphasize personal faith, social justice, and community engagement, appealing to those disillusioned with traditional institutions but still seeking spiritual meaning. This emerging, multicultural Christianity is often less dependent on grand historical buildings and more focused on transformed hearts and active community, suggesting that faith, in its most authentic forms, possesses a remarkable resilience and capacity for adaptation. Europe's cathedrals, in their magnificent emptiness, whisper profound questions about a time when faith built civilizations and provided a coherent worldview. The critical analysis of their current state reveals a complex interplay of historical forces, institutional failures, and evolving societal values. For historians, religious scholars, and sociologists, the present moment is a crucial crossroads. Will the continent's spiritual heritage remain a cherished memory, or can a renewed, perhaps radically different form of faith emerge from the ashes of institutional decline? The hopeful perspective suggests that the current secularization might be a crucible, refining faith into something more authentic and less reliant on power structures. The question isn't just, where did the faith go? But rather, what kind of faith can genuinely thrive in a post-Christian landscape, and what will be its impact on Europe's future identity? This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. Engage with these critical questions. Subscribe, share, and join the ongoing search for truth in a rapidly changing world.